So this is called a primary care provider reform. It's basically for veterans that want to change their primary care provider. So I don't know if this is a national thing or if this is just a local Alexandria, Louisiana Veterans Affairs medical thing, region thing. I have no idea. Every time I hear the VA say anything about a new form or a form that's new to me, or a a new policy, I immediately just really don't trust it at all. I think to myself, what have you guys done now? What has VA management come up with now to try to make life more difficult for veterans and for whoever else who's trying to be of assistance to them? Okay, that's immediately what I think of. And so I'd heard about this form, not knowing what it was, but it's not what I thought it was. And so basically, it actually, I don't have a problem with the form necessarily. Of course, I don't think that anyone should have to justify why they want to change their healthcare provider ever. Like, that's really just a really basic ethics kind of thing. But at the same time, I do respect what appears to be some measure of effort here, where it says any information basically used in the form is used to better serve other veterans, essentially, like the veteran filling out the form and other veterans. And they're talking about trying to improve and different things like that. There's something on this form that made me laugh, though. Like right here in this little black box, it's basically saying that they don't want people trying to change their provider or whatever, their healthcare provider, more than once per year. And I thought that was really comical because it made me wonder, are there veterans that are like trying to change providers like every week or something? Like, I kind of wondered what the situation is there, and what that looks like, because if there's a note on there about this, I feel like somebody has done this before. So anyways, but there's a demographic information, name, current date, last four social, which is super common at the VA. If you're a veteran or someone who takes care of a veteran, you'll know this. Telephone number, and then the current provider, whoever that is. And then it asks for the reasons, and all these little check boxes of what the reason is. And I imagine all of these reasons are potentially very common if they've made check boxes for them. I can't imagine that they would put some uncommon reason that they've never heard of on the form if it's not being said a lot. So then there's an area for additional comments. Of course, I like technology, so I would assume that I would think the best way to fill this form out would be digitally, because you can get the most in there with it being typed without having to handwrite it, and maybe not being legible because we're all write differently. And then also not having to attach more paperwork, which is always kind of a bonus, not having to attach more paperwork. Because I'm like paperwork queen over here. I hate paperwork, but I'm pretty great at it, is what I've been told. All right, and so then there's an area for signature and date, and the very bottom it says to be completed by chief of primary care, and then it says approve/assign to the box or denied reason. And so I'm guessing that if there's a denial based upon the information on this form, that it's likely because of a lack of availability, because I know from experience that with the healthcare industry, that typically, like, say, doctors will have panels, what I've heard them referred to as, of how many patients they can have in that panel. And so I'm just making up numbers, but let's say it's 100. Well, if you have 100, then you can't end up with 200. You're not supposed to, right? So I would imagine that plays into it as well, as far as who has availability. And also, if you have a really good healthcare provider, I've seen this happen firsthand. They'll be booked up because everyone's like jumping, trying to be on their panel, because they know that these other healthcare providers are not like this other one. You know what I mean? And so I've seen that happen where you have people that are being healthcare providers that are being actively avoided by patients in the healthcare system. And you've got like one provider, a really good one, that everyone's flocking to. And it becomes painfully obvious that there's a problem here with the provision of healthcare, shall we say, and quality of that between providers. So that's also, I'm sure, another thing that happens here, that veterans probably flock to a certain provider possibly because of that, or flock away from other providers because of that. So that was interesting. Now, I don't know if this form is a national form that is going all around the nation in the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, or if it's just a regional form, because as you can see, it has these regional locations of where they have some kind of medical facility offered. And but I don't know if this is every VA. This is the first time that I have ever gotten the majority of my healthcare services from the US Department of Veterans Affairs ever. It's the first time ever. And that's kind of just bonkers to me to think about, because I actively avoided the organization for years, and it was really easy for me to do that because I was utilizing a different healthcare system at the time. And I have started to diversify kind of how I access care, because there's a quality control issue with one of the departments at the Alexandria, Louisiana Veterans Affairs Medical Center region here. There's a quality control issue. There's no doubt. And the management appears to be really bad over it. I mean, I just have identified so many problems with that specific area of care. I reported them. Of course, no one listened. Like, nobody cares. Nobody cares in management. Which is why I do these videos, really, is to raise awareness and to educate the public about all of these issues. And I think I'll be doing video/podcasts for the rest of my life about this, because the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs is a content creation machine in and of itself. Like, there's so much stuff today that I was thinking about covering in a video, but about the VA, but it's impossible. I mean, it's possible, but I have other things to do besides make videos/podcasts all day, every day. And that's the kind of material we're talking about, the volume of it. I could literally make videos/podcasts every day, all day, for the rest of my life about the VA. And obviously I'm not going to do that, because I really have other things to take care of, for goodness sakes. But years ago, I remember getting kind of caught up when I was doing videos back in the day about the VA, and I didn't even go nearly as in depth as I am now. Now it's a whole different animal, since my legal stuff with the VA regarding the employment stuff is over with, because I just put an end to it, couldn't deal with it anymore. But there's a whole bunch of news articles and stuff that are coming out about the VA all the time, and about its affiliates, all these different governmental entities. And I just don't have the time or the energy to cover all of that, because it's just too much. Once in a while, I'll see other people online covering it, but it's pretty rare, because there's just not that many people with the interest to begin with to cover military community related topics in the way that I do and some of these other people do. There just aren't many of us. But